was actually windows and shower doors and windows that you would have on a building kind of a thing. And I was like, oh, it's a glass shop. I'm like, huh. And I kind of looked, I'm like, this is not like a glass shop that I'm used to. And I'd never actually seen one before. Honestly, I hadn't. I was like, all right. And then I started to notice a certain plant silhouette that was everywhere. It was part of the artwork. It was part of clothing. I was going, it's like marijuana is a big thing here. And while that may seem like an understatement, it really was how I felt when I came. I thought, is it really that big of a deal? And sometimes, you kind of need an outside perspective. Somebody who's just kind of coming in from the outside going, wait a second. Does anybody else not see this? And sometimes things can become wallpaper over generations where the importance of something can suddenly can disappear, I think, or not be seen as important. And that's the thing that, for me as a pastor, has definitely been troubling for me. Not so much of the world being the world, but Christians who, being especially in this marijuana culture, going, it's what it is. And it's like, hold on just a second. Wait, what? When did God say, hey, that's cool, we're all good, it's fine? Because it's where you live. I'm like, did he say that to the Corinthians or the Galatians? Corinth is what it is. They're into the idolatry stuff. It's fine. As a Christian, just accept it. And it's one of those where it's like, no, it's not right. There's something, we have to be spiritually awake. So I have a verse that, this is not going to be a Bible study, by the way. Tonight and the next 2 weeks are not going to be Bible studies. They're going to be informative. Typically in a Bible study, you would get verses and the spiritual aspect of something. I'll definitely interject it because as a pastor, it's going to be really difficult for me not to. However, I want us to look at some aspects that maybe at church we wouldn't look at. Things like the economics of the cannabis industry, the environmental impact, the human slavery side of things as well. Things that normally don't get mentioned because the time isn't there on a Sunday morning to really dive in. So that's why this topic and this series has been on my heart for quite a while. And with having John and Andrea, and you'll hear their experiences as well, and insight, it really brought it together. And I thought, now is the time to do this. So let me bring a verse up to you here. This is in this verse. Hold on a second. Got all these pieces of paper here. There we go. Galatians chapter 5. Galatians chapter 5, verse 16 says this, but I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Okay, walk by the Spirit, God's Holy Spirit, and you will not fulfill the desires of the flesh. What are the works of the flesh? Well, it's a good thing because Paul does describe what those are just a few verses later. Galatians 5, 19 through 21, he says this. Now the works of the flesh are evident, meaning they're obvious. It's not like we don't know, but just in case, sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, and orgies, and things like these. So if it's not even on this list, and things like these things. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. That sounds like a pretty serious statement. And you kind of look at it and you go, that's a big deal. But it's a good thing that marijuana is not on there, right? Do you remember how it says, and things like these? But if you look at the word sorcery, it's like, yeah, I'm not into witchcraft or the occult or anything like that. Except the word there for sorcery is the word pharmakia. And while we have it in some English translations translated as sorcery, probably a better translation would be drugs. That's actually what a better translation would be for that word. But why is it called sorcery? Because there would be drugs, plants, herbs added to the occult, the worship practices of the pagans around, to put them in an altered state as they were worshiping their false gods. And as Paul is writing to the Christians in Galatia, he's like, hey, here's a list of things that you're going to see in your society. And one of them was pharmakia, ingesting things to put you in an altered state. That is part of the list of things there. And it's no light thing. And that's why I think if as Christians we just go, it's not a big deal. you know what, it's already out there, so it's too late. I'm sorry, I don't have a verse in the scriptures that tells me to give up following the Lord and doing what he wants. So it's something that needs to be brought up. So tonight, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the economics of it. Now, okay, let's bring up this first screen. Like, Jim, here's a question. It's like, Jim, do you mean like CBDs or do you mean THCs? And I was like, okay, all right. So we can go into the effects of how one is non-psychotic and the other one is, but that isn't even the gist of what I want to talk about tonight. Tonight, I just want us to look at the general economics. What has been the economic cost and consequence where we live because of the marijuana industry? What has been the consequence? And it's like, well, CBDs aren't that big of a deal. I'm just going to say this. They're problematic in their association with the entire industry. That's the problem. And the gradualism, if you will, of how, hey, it's not a big deal because, my dog food has, I don't eat dog food, but, like, hey, maybe it's in something that I give my dog. Or you know what, I had a soda and it says CBD on it, so it's not that big of a deal. It's this desensitizing of culture. It's never going to come as this giant, like, here it is in your face. It's going to come in gradually and it become culturally acceptable before it begins to continue its downward slide. This is why CBDs are problematic. I'll just leave it at that. But I don't even want to get into the details of that because we want to talk more in the general economics of it. So that being said, this is where I turn it over to you guys. So talk to us a little bit about the economics of, what about the history in this area, John? You are not a new person to this area. You're kind of like a person who came here once, left, and then came back here. Yeah. So tell us about the economics of it all and the history of it here.
Well, and I want to...
You're on, yeah.
I want to say also you're talking about the gradualism side of it. The thing you're starting to see now is you're starting to find mushrooms added to so many things in the energy drinks. At the farmer's market, there's some people that sell hot chocolate with different types of mushrooms in it. So they're already starting the pathway onto that with mushrooms and legalizing the kind that are going to actually have psychotic effects for you too. Mm-hmm. So it's clear they do start the gradualism on all these things slowly with certain products, and then as it gets more and more accepted, they add it to more and more things, and then when it's full blown, again, like you said, it's no big deal. It's been around forever, and that's just kind of the attitude they get on these things. And that's kind of how marijuana was too here. So when I was a student in the early 90s, the economy was a lot better for a lot of reasons. You still had some forestry. The fishing industry was still pretty strong. And at the time, marijuana, of course, was illegal. So you had...
when was this that you were a college student?
1990 to 93 up here.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and then they had the illegal growers and things like that, but it was very small compared to today, very small. There were a lot of them back then, but it was very small. And no one can question what it contributed to the economy. And if you were a politician at the time, you knew that it also, it was a vital hidden industry for the local economy also. They knew how much money was being, moved around the county based on illegal marijuana grows.
So when you were here in the early 90s, money was in the economy.
Oh yeah, it was thriving back then, even for sure. And so when I was fast forward a little bit to when I was an officer in Las Vegas, they started talking about the medical marijuana side of things, and I went to several conferences that talked about they were actually looking at the idea of medical marijuana. And what do I mean by that? So Canada had a couple different types of marijuana products that were through prescription from your doctor, and they come in like a little pressurized spray can, and one spray on your tongue, whatever the amount was, we can just say was like 0.2 milligrams of it. I'm just making those numbers up, but that's the idea. And so they would say, okay, take two or however you need for whatever they were prescribing it for. And at the time, that seemed like, we did that with opium. And to be honest, we did that with opium. We broke it up into different type of pain medicines and had different milligrams and all these things. And so they looked promising. But there was going to be a strict control system, and it was for medical use. But then, after a couple of years, it just kind of, all that went out the door, and this whole push then pushed to recreational use and, free for all. And that's kind of what took over, and the whole medical side of it really has disappeared. Nobody really talks about it much anymore, about the medical side of it. So
because of its availability.
Yeah, its availability. And on the economic side of it, they saw it as, especially California, especially up here, as the savior of the county, because we really don't have a forestry system any longer. People work in those jobs. There's some, of course, but not like it used to be. And the fishing industry is just come to a standstill. Every year they're canceling crab season and salmon season. So that's just completely unreliable now. And so the idea was this was going to be that new thing to save the county, because now that it was legal, there was going to be more cells, to the point where they started adding it to all the county budgets. And at the state level too. But I'm not going to talk much about the state level. But just at Humboldt County level, this was going to be the thing that fixed the budgets. And so much so that when we talk about Measure S, 65%, that's hard. That's a pretty high number. 65% of Humboldt County voters voted yes on Measure S, to have that tax on marijuana production. And it specifically said in the bill that it was going to go to law enforcement, to county agencies. It was just going to fill these different areas of the budget.
So this is in 96?
No. I'm fast forwarding.
Measure S
is 2022, right? Yeah, passed in 2022 election.
Okay.
And
with 65% of
65%
the
of
vote.
Humboldt County voters voted for it, because it's like when you think of, let's pass a school bond so we can do all these things with the money, and that's what you hope is going to happen. And so this was passed, and it also brought legitimacy to the marijuana. Again, it was another step to legitimizing the whole industry, because look at all these areas of the county budget we're going to be able to fix with the sale of marijuana.
So some of the areas you mentioned that are now dependent upon the tax income of the marijuana industry what are some of the
Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, so law enforcement, District Attorney's Office, really any county agency was going to see some money from this. That was the plan.
And schools.
And schools, yeah, Humboldt County schools, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So anything county related would benefit, period.
Is it just me, or is it problematic that you're tying in schools and
law
enforcement with?
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of ironic.
But it passed with 65% of the vote.
65%, and then again, it gives it that idea that, it legitimizes the industry more. Okay, if people are buying this, the money's going to a good cause, like the lottery idea. Mm-hmm. It's, another vice, and for the purposes of the money. So,
as you're talking about the history of it here, we have a first now in Humboldt County. I don't think it's a great first, but a class that is being offered.
A degree, actually, not just a class, a whole degree.
It's not just a single class, it's a whole
Right.
degree. I think we have a screen for this.
Yeah. Do we have that up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is cannabis studies as a degree at Cal Poly.
Yep.
And it's first point there, grounded in the liberal arts and dedicated to a stigma-free approach, the program is the only one of its kind in the United States. Right here, right across town. I kind of look at, you get the idea of like, okay, so you're going to college, you're getting a degree, and then the question is, what kind of job are you going to be able to use that degree for? I was asking the question when I saw this degree.
And that's not the only cannabis degree. That's a cannabis studies degree. There's also a more scientific side of a degree that they have available in the production side that HSU is offering also. So this is just one of them.
It was interesting because in there, you may not be able to read it, but it says, and there's some asterisks, so I always look where the asterisks are, right? It says, at this time, the cannabis studies major does not include touching cannabis or training or curriculum in cultivating, processing, or selling cannabis. Which then made me go, I'm a little confused now. What are we, you can't, wait. So then it becomes this whole soup of words. With a focus on the social environmental responsibility, the bachelor's degree program explores the historical, geographical, cultural, economic, and political context of cannabis legalizations. That's a lot of words that doesn't necessarily say a whole lot of stuff. And you just kind of look and you go, And so here we are in our little town with a first of its kind degree. So really the cultural acceptance of it, I mean, if it's gotten to the point where...
Yeah, now we have a college degree.
Now we have a college degree.
Just another level.
Okay, so we brought that up when we were talking earlier, and I thought I had to go look it up and find the actual page because it is a real thing. So tell us a little bit more then about either the recreational use or maybe more as Andrea, as you have some stuff to chime in on this here.
On recreational use, or on, I have a lot on the licensing, taxes, and the rest, but recreational use, I don't have stats on that, but I know what happens.
I remember we talked.
I cannot partake.
And I remember we talked a little bit too about the fact that there was this big push to get smoking out of all the bars, smoking out of the casinos, but yet we have two smoking lounges now for marijuana here in Humboldt County.
I remember
licensed.
I remember you couldn't have a cigarette ad without a giant Surgeon General warning. It didn't matter if it was a billboard or an ad in a paper or something. Like, you had to have the big white square that said Surgeon General's warning.
Yeah.
Does that apply to the cannabis industry, where there's a surgeon?
No, because it's healthy. It's good for you.
Where there's a Surgeon General's warning?
No, I haven't seen it on any product or on the in the windows or anything like that.
Yeah, I just remember that was a very notable box. Even as a kid growing up, I remember you'd have the Marlboro Man or the Winston cigarette person or whatnot, and it was a giant white box that was in the ad. And it was just one of those where the Surgeon General says this. It's like, okay, interesting. And I just don't see as many warnings per se as you would see today.
Yeah.
So Andrea, you are a kind of, you like spreadsheets and stats and numbers. Admit it, you're one of those people, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how do you fit into this whole conversation, and how do you know these numbers that you're about to share and all that other stuff? Do you just do this in your hobby, free time, or how do you know this stuff?
So I do work for the county. I work for the sheriff's office, and I am the crime and intel analyst that's assigned to the marijuana enforcement team. So that's how I fit into the puzzle here. So I do a lot of statistics and reporting. I have to report each month to our so there's a task force that is nationwide, and it's called the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. There's, I think, I'm not going to quote it because I don't know how many there are in the country, but I'm pretty sure that California has the most. I think we have 3 within our state. And so I'm a liaison analyst for them. The closest one that we have is for Northern California, is in San Francisco. And so without us having a whole lot of people up here, it doesn't justify them having an office. So what they do is they give us, myself and the analyst that's assigned to the drug task force, we just get access to some programs to help us do some intel stuff. So that's how we get paid to help them out with their mission, with our mission.
So when Andrea told me what she did, I was like, thank you, Lord. I've just found the right people to help on this side of things, because you are actually looking at up-to-date numbers.
Yes, yeah. I do all the stats for marijuana for our county. And then they get reported to the regional in San Francisco, and then they get all compiled by the DEA for the state and then for the nation. So that's what I do, and that's how I fit in, I guess. Did you want me to talk about the stats?
You can talk about whatever you want at this point. I just wanted folks to know, before you shared the stats, how you would even know these stats. So yes, please tell us.
Oh, okay. Could we pull up the screen for, oh, you know, I don't have a screen for that. I can tell you though, hang on a second. What I do have, I don't have like the stats for how many plants we pulled. I didn't pull that data. Well, I have the data, but we didn't pick a screen for it, sorry. But I do have some information on the amount of licenses that we have here within the county versus how many are issued through the state versus our population, what we have here. So every Friday, the California Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC, sends out a license list to certain people who are authorized to have that data. And so I just took a look at the list on the 6th of October preparing for this. So this data that I have isn't last Friday, but the Friday before. So Humboldt County has the second most active state licenses for cultivation in our state. We have 2,244 active cultivation licenses out of the whole state has 14,710. So we make up 15% of the state in cultivation licenses, and we're second only to Santa Barbara, which just beat us out as, we used to be first, and then Santa Barbara beat us out like about a year ago.
But they have a much larger population number.
Yeah, they do. So the population of Santa Barbara is 443,837 according to the U.S. Census Bureau as 7/1 of 2022. And that's about 3.5 times larger than Humboldt County's population. We have 135,000 roughly. So with that being said, with how many licenses that we have cultivation and how many licenses or how many people we have living in our county, that's about 1 out of 60 people that would have a license. I mean, that's...
Wait, could you say it again? One out
of 60.
So out of every 60 people, one person in Humboldt County has a cultivation license?
Yeah, what do we have, about 60 in this room? Maybe? Right. I don't know.
Who is it?
Which one of you? No, just kidding.
Hey. Joe. Yeah, tomatoes. Mm-hmm.
So with that, with the Santa Barbara population, it's 1 in 165 people, and for the state, it would be 1 in 2,653 people.
In Santa Barbara?
In the whole state.
In the whole state.
In Santa Barbara, it's 1 in 165.
So wait, in our whole state of California, 1 out of how many would have a cultivation license in the whole state?
2,653. Our state's population is 39 million.
And change.
And change.
Yeah. So 1 in 2,000 and change for the whole state, but 1 in 60 in Humboldt County.
And we make up 0.35% of the state's population. But we have 15% of the state's cultivation licenses.
It's hyper concentrated where we live. Lay on some more stats on us, Andrea.
Oh, okay. I hope I'm not boring you. I know this is not like the most exciting thing for people to hear. What else do I have? Humboldt County has 243 non-cultivation licenses. Non-cultivation would be like sales, retail. So there's, or manufacturing, which again would be like, so you have a plant, it has to get processed. So there's 37 manufacturing licenses that are in Arcata. I thought it would be interesting to pull out how many are in Arcata since we're located in Arcata. Mm-hmm. 45 non-cultivation state licenses in Arcata. So adding those together, you have 80 something. So just in this tiny little city
of Arcata.
Yeah.
So then we have some of those asset ones. Oh, those are for later. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I just don't want to miss any of the screens that you have because you do have a few screens that I think are really important.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot in that PDF file that we took the 2 asset forfeiture things out of, that are like plant count, how many pounds of marijuana processed that we have, overall. And so if anybody's ever interested in more data, I have so much. I have it going back to 2016. So if you're really, really interested, but I'm not going to bore you with all that. So
Andrea's eyes light up when she shows you the PDF of all this stuff. And it is like chart after chart after chart of statistics.
It's so
right
pretty.
here in Humboldt County. Yeah.
I even made it like some pretty colors.
Well, John, do you have anything on this side of things as well on the?
No, we can just talk a little bit for a minute about Measure S a little bit more.
Yep.
Sure.
So with Measure S, it passes by 65% of the voters, and last fall, oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Last fall, they decided, a lot of the growers felt that they just weren't making any money off of it, so they petitioned the County Board of Supervisors and asked them to put the tax on hold, the tax from Measure S, which again, 65% of the voters approved of.
That was to fund law enforcement and
All the county agencies, yes.
county agencies.
And so the county agreed with them and agreed with their plea and put a moratorium on the entire tax last fall.
100% of the tax was not being paid.
So this is after all the county agencies made budgets, including the money that was going to come in from Measure S.
And it was a good amount of money because they were taxed $1 to $3 per square foot of their commercial business. So the size, it was based on the size of their grows. And that had passed back in 2016. So all the way from 2016 to 2022 is when that was in effect. And then what we experienced as a county, I don't know if there's any other county workers here. I see one back there. But, and another. We were all, I wouldn't want to say threatened, but we were a little bit afraid of talks that were circling about with the possibility of layoffs or early retirement offers, which I guess I don't think I would mind that much, but maybe not quite ready.
Because the money wasn't coming in because there's a moratorium on all of the cannabis tax.
Specifically Measure S.
Sorry, Measure S.
Tax,
Measure
yeah.
S tax, okay.
Yeah.
So is that?
Yeah, so for the last year, there hasn't been any tax on this, and so all these agencies now are hurting really bad. In fact, they couldn't fill positions at the sheriff's department because of this and various other county jobs.
Is this typical for other industries that you would have a moratorium of
Never.
taxes?
I've never heard them put any other tax on hold.
So this is a very unique, 100%, you don't have to pay your taxes.
Yeah, and it's also going 100% against the will of the voters. It's the county supervisor saying, well, we don't care that 65% of you voted for this tax because you thought that was a good idea. We're going to override you. And it's really what they did.
And it's been like that
for a year.
For a year.
Yeah, and then 2 weeks ago, they met again.
We have a screen. Here
because they were hurting so bad that
so they voted to change it. So
they voted to change it.
A big change.
No. we're gonna tax them 10% instead of, we're still only gonna do 10% of the total tax.
That's where it is currently.
Yeah, so as of 2 weeks ago, and at least probably for the next year.
For the next year, it'll be just only 10%.
Yeah, unless for some reason they met again and decided to do more, I don't see them addressing it again. And really, the only reason, my guess, is that they did the 10% was, political pressure. You had all these people say, we voted for this. And you have all these county agencies that said, you told us to make a budget based on this.
So the political pressure was only worth 10%?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man. Because this means the law enforcement and schools and all this other stuff for almost 2 years now then.
Yeah.
Last year and then only 10% for the next year?
Yeah.
What does that do for your budget when you have anticipated?
10%, is really not much of anything. It really isn't.
And I don't think they have to start, I don't think till probably January, but I'm not sure. I can't remember what the...
Yeah. So, yeah, it was, it'll be interesting. But they know they can get away with it too because the voters aren't going to hold that against them. They'll be like, oh, okay, that was a good idea. So that's how they could override the voter will there. And then, the other thing that, they didn't really take into consideration is the density of outlets. when they first passed the legalization is, they make a lot of money for every application. And whether they approve your application or not, you don't get your money back. So for everybody that applies for any type of license, it's a lot of money that the county and the state. Did you have a chart on that? Or no?
I didn't, but you have something here. Okay.
Yeah,
I found like the city stuff. I was having a hard time trying to find the application fees for the county for whatever reason, but I did find that the cities were a little bit easier to locate their
and
fee
the state
schedules.
was pretty easy too.
The state was
Yeah.
actually very easy to find, but the city of, hang on a second.
While you're looking that up, it seemed like we were having an oversaturation, or this was trying to be made into a tourist destination.
Yes. Yeah. The idea was that they even use these
Regarding the
words.
marijuana industry, I mean, as
Yeah,
a tourist,
certain
as a tourist.
elected officials here use the idea this was going to be a tourist destination, a lot like Napa Valley for wine. And I'm like, okay, there's a problem here. The people that go buy wine tend to be wealthy and, will travel even from other countries to go to Napa for the wine growing region to see it. Marijuana users aren't quite the same. That never really seemed to come to fruition. I just can't imagine that in the future either, being an issue either.
And with the legalization and the decriminalization of it, to be able to grow plants in other states too,
Yeah.
why would they come to Humboldt County?
Humboldt County reputation, I guess, having the idea out there is that Humboldt County marijuana is the best available. So
then
they figured people would come here for that since it was fully legalized. That's also how they got the approval for the 2 lounges, is because they figured people would come here from other locations just to, use the
For that.
marijuana products here.
So you mentioned if you drive down Eureka, especially, you'll see closed location after closed location.
Yeah, there's several spots that are, the parking lots are completely closed and taped off, that the dispensaries just are not making it at all. And it's kind of an odd thing because you go into the dispensaries and it's like it's a weird thing because they're all selling the same thing for the most part. So it'd be different if like Farmer A had his own shop and you're going there, I'm getting stuff all from Farmer A. But I mean, it's not. You have everybody's stuff. Every shop has everybody's stuff. So there's really not a whole lot unique about any of the dispensaries. And so when you see so many of them, it seems like it's almost a plan to fail because there's just so many.
So
they're spread out
they've
everywhere.
oversaturated the market.
Absolutely. But part of the reason they did that is like I say, those fees. Every time they open one or even an application is they make thousands of dollars just off an application.
So crazy. It makes me want to pull out my hair because I don't know how you feel about it, but that just seems so short-sighted. Mm-hmm. Like we get something in the short term so that we can reap these consequences for years to come.
Yeah.
Yet there's other industries or segments of the economy that get denied to come and have a business here because they are protecting the market of the individuals that are already currently in business. Natural foods I'm going to go with. Can we have a Trader Joe's here? No. Have they tried? Yes. Why can't we? Can we have a Home Depot here? No. Why not? Thank you. I'm not going to mention the names, but I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I think you all know.
The same people that donate a lot to the local races, local politicians.
So there's a protection in place for some, but not for all.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. So, okay. So licensing fees, taxes, and all of that. How about we talk a little bit more about how this economics is actually hitting day-to-day life in our society here, right here in Humboldt County?
Yeah. Well, I don't have statistics on this. I know that's kind of weird, but I do know, though, from just perusing a website that you guys can all go to. It's called the National Marijuana Initiative, N as in Nancy, M as in marijuana, .org.
NMI.org?
NMI.org.
Okay.
And that has a plethora of information if you guys are ever interested in learning a little bit more. But there's a little bit of a conversation there on the cost on the medical system. And up here, we don't have a whole lot of medical providers. It's very difficult for people to get appointments, and mental health system as well. Very, very difficult for people to get appointments. I mean, we're going out of the area on Friday for one of John's, so we're constantly having to travel. So the stress that it puts on the medical industry is ginormous. Lots of ER visits. We wait in the ER for hours and hours, and some people just give up and just leave. And
Yeah, and on that, we had a friend that we went to a dinner at their house, and they had a traveling doctor that was at the dinner also, that she's known for years, and he comes up here to work in Humboldt County in the emergency room, you know, for like a month at a time, and travels to other states. And he said, you people do not have any idea the amount of stomach issues coming into the ER that are solely related to all the marijuana edibles. And he said, especially in teenagers. And he said, nobody talks about it, especially if they're, you know, using a lot of it, eating a lot of it. Mm-hmm. They're coming in with all kinds of new stomach issues and stomach pain, and it's a common thing in the ER. And he said when he comes here, it's not as common when he goes anywhere else, but here, there's a lot of them.
So on the college students, just since you are a college professor as well at CR, what are some of the things that you notice with students in general that you've seen regarding the marijuana trade and the influence it has for students, for somebody to be in class? I mean, I know you're not the most exciting teacher, so that's going to be part of their boredom, but he gets me all the time. I've got to get him every once and again. So,
yeah, it's like you'll know when someone with the product on them comes into the classroom. You smell it right away, and you know, they're always the same students that are just kind of sitting in the classroom with that blank stare.
They're not your superior.
More than the other students. They
wait, hold
give
on.
you the blank
You're telling me
stare.
they're not your superior students?
Huh? No, they aren't. And you know, you get a paper from them, and it's kind of like what you'd expect. You look at it and go, okay, I don't know what you're saying here, but okay. And
but in all seriousness, like for our future though, like what does that mean if we have college students that are just occupying a seat?
Yeah, and there's policies that you know, talk about if you have students show up drunk and those kind of things. And but I haven't seen any that specifically relate to, you know, under the influence of marijuana, for instance. And you know, it's depending on the semester. Sometimes you'll have more than other semesters of the students that use before they get to the class, but it happens.
Yeah, and you see it in the classroom.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Andrea, on the sorry, we were talking about the societal costs. Yes.
Water usage, water theft. The plant of the cannabis plant, it is about 80 to 95% made of water, much as we are, I guess. But it's also a very heavily consuming plant of water. And you'll get varying ideas of how much to water from different people that are in the know that grow. But there's a little guide that I found. It goes based on like the life cycle of a plant. So a light misting several times a day for seedlings, a gallon every 3 to 5 days for young vegetative plants, 2 gallons every 3 to 5 days for crops in their late vegetative growth. And then you slowly reduce that as the plant starts to flower. Now, if you multiply that by an actual grow, which is thousands and thousands of plants, like a large commercial grow, it becomes quite a bit, even if they're not stealing water, it becomes quite a bit of a stress on our very, very drought-heavy state. Up here, we tend not to have too much issues with water, but it gets shipped. You know, we don't get to keep it all, and our cost to, I don't know what your guys' water bill is like, but it's not cheap. So I just feel like that is a really big problem that we have here, and there are a lot of the grows that I go on that have water theft, where they're just like taking a great big giant like hose or PVC all the way down to a creek bed. So they're taking the water from all of you that should be having water, or from our agricultural community that actually need that for growing crops that we consume. So that's a societal cost that I see. Another one would be power theft. I know that PG&E is so expensive. That's just to show you what those smart meters. Yeah. I like the 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. There's been some recent people or person that has come up with a way to manipulate the smart meter, and I don't know what it is, if it's a computer chip or what, but they and
We'll get you his number later.
I do have that. Not with me, but I have. But yeah, so PG&E is really, really interested in going after this and prosecuting once this person is located, because it is such a large amount of money that they have been robbed of, basically. And I know that, how many times have you guys all gotten things in the mail from PG&E saying, oh, your rate's going up, oh, your rate's going up, and we're paying how many hundreds of dollars each month just to keep our lights on or our heat going in the wintertime. And I don't know if it's directly related to some of this type of activity, but that's, I mean, thousands of dollars that they don't get from these people that are stealing from them. And sometimes they don't know it until we find it. So they don't know they're missing out on some things until we call up PG&E, and they actually have like an analyst there that does communicate and liaise with law enforcement, and they're wonderful people. But they will tell you, oh, well, that's weird, we didn't register that. Like, they'll look at usage and see, with a smart meter, you can see like, oh, okay, this is like, they establish your pattern of life. So at 5 in the morning, you know, house A wakes up, you can just see the, you know, things go up. And then they'll see, well, that's really weird though. This one that you're telling us about, there's like,
so they've hacked the smart meter to basically not show any usage or any history.
Or really, really low. Or they will, yeah, it's like a really low.
Which doesn't fit when you look at some of these grows pictures that we have, right? So if we can put up one of the two.
Okay, so this.
Yeah, that's going to use more than just a little bit of power, probably.
Yeah, that uses a little bit more than a little bit of power. So that would be, these are illegal grow pictures from warrants that I've been on. This one is going to be using, so that is likely the same room. You can see that there's two different types of lighting. Now this one's like a yellow light. That's a metal halide light, and those use way more power than the T5 lights that are up in the ceiling that produce that like white color. Yeah, the fluorescent.
Yeah, that light.
So that costs less, but the way that a plant works, a marijuana plant, especially on an indoor grow, what they try to do is they try to like manipulate the plant into thinking that it's certain times of day or certain times of the year, so that they can grow and grow and grow throughout the whole year in an indoor. But in an outdoor, they're subject to Mother Nature and, you know, the lights that the sun provides. So they try and trick the plant to going into like the vegetative state or the flower state. And that's all based upon the lighting. Lots and lots and lots of lights. And that's expensive.
There's your PG&E bill right there. That's where, yeah.
And fans. Yeah. And fans. That's an illegal grow.
And Andrea, for your work, the grows you're going for, you're not going at small ones. You're going for large illegal grows, generally speaking?
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, the smaller ones, they might come from complaints. So, I mean, we're going to act no matter what the size is. We've gone on, you know, indoors in like a residential where you might only yield, I don't know, like 100 or maybe 60 plants, which to maybe most of the people in this room sounds like a lot, but that right there is, you know, 1,000 probably like 1,200 plants. So those are like the normal size grows that we try to hit, these larger ones. And we had a really, really big one this summer.
We have an aerial picture too from the law enforcement one.
No, I'm not going to say if that's legal or not because I was just up in the helicopter snapping pictures because I thought it was fun. But
Well, that's not uncommon. You found
it is not uncommon. I have found, like, one of the very first warrant that I ever went on with my team was, it was pretty big. It was a pretty decent sized grow, but they do look just that professional. So I'm not going to say whether that's a legal or illegal grow because I didn't have the GIS with me that has all, because we do have access to like what's permitted, what's not, and we always make sure that we check with the Department of Cannabis Control too. They come on some of our search warrants with us so they can, if it is a permitted grow and a licensed grow, that they can deal with it at that level because it's in their hands too.
Mm-hmm. We have another law enforcement one. Do you want to look at that one and describe? I think we got a second one. Yeah, let's go for that too.
Is it guns? Oh, guns. This was from this summer. Well, no, maybe it was the spring. I think it was from the spring. But that was a lot. I think we took probably like 22 firearms on that one search warrant. And they look pretty scary. So I didn't go on this one, thank goodness. I just had to help process the guns when
I
they
don't
came
know how
back.
all of California's gun laws haven't stopped us.
You couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It could be.
Talk about the cartels that we have up
Okay,
here.
we do have some. Humboldt County, since we've had this team up and running for many, many years, we've been pretty good at running people out. But that doesn't mean that they go super far. Trinity County is experiencing a heavy influx of the people that we had pushed out of our county. So they have a lot where we go out and help them. Siskiyou as well, we'll go out and help Siskiyou because a lot of them have fled. We had, I think we still do. We have a little bit, some of them are legal now, but the Bulgarian grows were really, really prevalent.
Did you say Bulgarian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You wouldn't think, but yeah. And we had a Hmong population grow as well. But they pretty much moved out of our county's borders. And then to the north of us, a lot of them pushed up to Oregon. So right now, Southern Oregon is experiencing a lot of influx on illegal grow as well.
Wow. So because of the task force and what's been going on, that's pushed out. And you guys are actively doing that.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, that I have the stats from like going back from 2016 on up to present day, and you can see not that we're not working hard, but it's just that we've worked so hard in the past that on top of it not paying off for people to grow as much anymore because of the cost, it's been prohibitive. And the price per pound that people are paying or per plant has gone down. That's like that supply and demand thing. There's so many, so a lot of people that were working on or doing grows are just getting out of it entirely. But then some of them have just decided that they're not going to replant anymore after we've cut. So either they've left or whatever, but our plant count has gone down a little bit. Our number of search warrants are still, pretty, we're hanging in there, but we don't get normally, or we haven't been recently getting as many plants and pounds, but I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. So there's a map here that shows two locations in our area here. It's called Societal, I think it is. There it is. What is this describing
Okay, this
here?
is, so this is a program that I have access to, and I just want to explain it a little bit before I'll give you some background before I explain the map. So this is a program that was put into place based upon a anti-money laundering law. I don't know, So I watched this show on Netflix, and I don't necessarily recommend it for the church population. It's got a lot of bad stuff in it, but it's called Ozark, if you're familiar with that. Jason Bateman, Julia Garner, Laura Linney. They work for the cartels and helping them launder their money. I'm very interested in this. I love learning about financial fraud and investigation. So anyways, the backstory is on this map. The Bank Secrecy Act of 1970, it's also called the Currency and Foreign Transactions Reporting or Anti-Money Laundering Law. It authorized the Department of Treasury to impose reporting and other requirements on financial institutions and businesses to keep or to help detect and prevent money laundering from occurring. So banks are required to keep records of cash purchases, of money orders, or negotiable instruments, file reports on cash transactions in excess of $10,000 a day. Which if you've ever seen that show I told you don't necessarily need to watch, they talk about something called smurfing, which is a way that people try to get around being detected by doing deposits or transactions within that threshold. They will ask several different people to go in and do this, and they'll just pick a person off the street even that sometimes can you go and deposit this money, can you go and do this and do that. And so that's just a way that they try to skirt the system. But the banks are required to report suspicious activity reports, and that could mean it could hit that threshold of the 10,000, or maybe you're coming in and the money smells terribly of marijuana, because it is a very potent plant. If you're around it, the odor transfers to just about everything. Like when I go on a search warrant and I come home, it's nasty. I smell gross. But anyways, backstory on that. So this is supposed to help prevent the money laundering and tax evasion and criminal activities. So this system here is called TRAC, and that's Transactional Record Analysis Center. It also ties in with something called, on the national level as well, called FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So this, I can log into this system, and it will give me information on whatever I want to, parameters I want to put in there. So this is transactions within the last 90 days here in our little area in Humboldt County. And it's showing on the top one, El Buen Gusto Market in Eureka on Broadway. It's showing, so this is where people will go and you can buy Western Union and that kind of stuff. So their volume in the last 90 days, which is about 3 months time period, was $504,430.21.
So
and
half
every
a
dollar,
$500,000 in the last 90 days at this one
every one
market.
of those dollars was sent. That's not a receipt, all sent.
Like Western Union.
Western-
$500,000 was Western Union out of that one store,
Just that one
out
store.
of this area.
And if you look, I don't know if you can read it, it's kind of small, but it says the Eureka average is $106,875.37, but that particular location was $504,000.
5 times higher than the Eureka average for Western Unions.
All the other ones, yeah.
And even the California state average is only 166,000. So that particular location, that one was second in the county for the last 90 days.
So then money that's being earned here in this area is being sent out of this county,
For whatever reason,
and usually out of the country?
Usually. All over.
all over. I do phone analysis. So when my people go out on search warrants, if they encounter somebody or any electronics, they'll bring it back, they'll seize it, and I process it and go through it. So almost every single phone I get has receipts for Western Union or the like, and it's always sent, and they take pictures of it because they're showing proof of that they've done something. and then they send it to whoever the recipient is to show, hey, see, I'm sending you the money, it's on its way.
So then if I'm reading this right then, Andrea, so then the Walmart in Eureka in the 90 days had $550,000 go out, which is 5 times higher than the Eureka average as well.
But some of that money isn't, is a buy. So some of it was being sent and then some of it was being received on the Walmart one. But
the market in Eureka, that was all being sent?
100%.
100% of that $500,000 was going out?
If you look at the bottom line where it says send, pay, buy, sell ratio.
Oh, it says all send.
All send. So that's an economic, whatever reason, I'm not here to say that that's for all drugs or anything like that, because people do have legitimate reasons to send money, and that's not a crime. It's just a suspicion, it's something that's like, oh, that's weird. And I can search by, person. If I'm investigating a specific person, I can, type in their name and identifiers, or maybe I don't have their name, but I have who it's been sent to. I can, filter different things and just try and see like what's going on. But that was just the top 2. And we cropped the bottom part that showed the rest of them, but
so
that's
you're just giving us a sampling.
To show you, that's just this little picture of what life is like.
Mm-hmm.
So all those pins are locations that do?
Yeah, all those pins are, and then it also tracks Bitcoin or cryptocurrency stuff too. So there are a couple of locations in the county that do crypto transfers. One of them's at the mall. I'm pretty sure that I've seen one at the gas station on 14th and G here. Is it G?
I don't know if you realize this. I'm realizing it more and more as we're sitting here. You are a very detailed-oriented person, Andrea. Where I would be like, yeah, it's like 504,000, give or take. You're like that and the decimal point and every cent. So I appreciate the detail-oriented nature that you have. Could you talk a little bit about the asset forfeiture?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to pull up the screen for the 2023 one with the 4 boxes. Yes. So this is part of my fun. This is only a comparison for our team's work this year. And it's not just asset forfeiture on this page. I called out all the things that I was tracking. So asset forfeiture, we as a county, my team sees $256,000 just from, we do the fiscal year that the feds are on, so it's October 22 to September 23. So that's how much cash that we processed and came into our budget. It sits there though, because they still have the opportunity to try and claim it and see, they go to, talk to a magistrate, a judge, and if they deem that the monies can be released, then, it goes. So not to say that all that money gets to stay with us, but some of it does, so that's nice. And we actually work sometimes with like the federal agencies and the IRS, and currently they're doing some work on a larger case where I think that there may be some property that's going to be seized. Because if you can prove one sale that somebody has done, an illegal drug transaction, then it puts into question the entire bank account. So anything that you have in your bank now is subject to a possibility of being seized. If we don't really go into people's banks too much at all, but this is all just like cash that was on site that it was all cash. And you have to get approval from the DA to do this.
So then you have some other categories too?
I do. 79 weapons that we seized, and so that picture that you saw there included those. 15,000 pounds of bulk processed marijuana, so that's like bud and hash. 110,000 plants that we chopped during that time frame.
And then this is a small, though, drop in the bucket of what's happening here in Humboldt County, though,
That
right?
is, yeah. And the reason that I don't have this as a comparative chart with the rest of the nation is the Department of, the the Drug Enforcement Agency. They collect that stuff, all those stats, but they don't let that data out because they have to kind of filter through. So I won't probably see the nation's data until at least March or April of next year for 2023. But if you go to the next screen, that's a chart. This is asset forfeiture, and it does include the nation. If you look, California's, it's on the top, and it's on the top every year back to 2016. It's always on the top.
So 35% of the assets seized regarding illegal cannabis trade here, 35% is in the state of California.
Yes, that's right.
Of the whole nation. But if I look, I see our county actually beats out some states. If you look at the very bottom of the list over to the right there, we beat Florida, Nebraska, and Missouri, and probably a whole bunch on that list too. So our one county has had more assets seized than some states have.
And this is voluntary reporting. Unless you receive the federal dollars for, it's the Domestic Cannabis Eradication Suppression Program that reports this all out. So we receive, in Humboldt County, we receive those dollars. They give us in grant funding. It helps us with paying for positions, but mostly with equipment and technology that we need to do our jobs.
So that means in 2022, in California, there were 14 and a half, I'm rounding here, $14.5 million assets seized.
Yes.
But of that, Humboldt County had 75,000
Yes.
of that, which is more than some states.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, this was a small year, so that's kind of funny. But that was a small year because
Because there's some years where Humboldt County is even higher up on this list.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they are.
See, this is
They're
not something
up
like, I
top.
mean, I'm not like, yay, but it's like, oh boy.
So I think like 2 years ago, if I remember, that's when we started. We didn't get to do our own asset forfeiture for the sheriff's office until about 2 years ago when I started working with them. The sheriff decided that he wanted to take that away from, because it was all just in a big pile. It was included in the drug task force, and it was all just a big pile. But that, since the drug task force is comprised of various agencies, it's got Arcata, Eureka, Fortuna, so they all have officers that work on that in this task force. So that means they all get a piece of that pie. So the sheriff made a decision and talked with the DA. This is all how it had happened. They had to go through this whole process, and they wanted all the marijuana monies, since that is not a task force. That's all just Humboldt County Sheriff's Office that goes on these. We do get assistance sometimes from the state Fish and Wildlife that'll come, but no other agency in the county does work on that. So he wanted for our asset forfeiture to be done separately from the drug task force asset forfeiture. So 2 years ago when we started, I think the numbers it was a pretty big one. I think we had probably over maybe 200,000 at least. It could have been more.
Mm-hmm. Almost 3 times as much, or yeah, something 2.5, 3 times as much. So I think you can understand why, like, this isn't something that would be brought up on a Sunday morning. It's just too detailed. There's just too much stuff. And at the same time, we've only just scratched the surface. But what this does, hopefully, is it gives you as a church access to a few folks that you can ask questions to in a more detailed way, and they can give you some answers. I mean, I am thankful for how God puts people in different places in our society. And very thankful for John and for you, Andrea, for where God has placed you, and you know how God uses you, and definitely for tonight to let us know a little bit of insight. You know, for some of you, it may be a little bit more than you wanted to know, but I think in a general sense, it just lets you know, like, there's a whole industry that's running right as we come and go and all of that. And we have to be wise. I mean, we have to be good stewards of what God has given to us and our possessions, our finances. As Christians, we have to remember, like, it's not our money, it's God's. We're just holding it for a little while. He wants us to use it for his glory. And this is really important because if we put into this industry, it continues to perpetuate all of these consequences that are happening. Wait till next week when you hear the environmental consequences, or the week after that when you hear about the human slavery. And it's one of those where it's like, no, I mean, very briefly, John, could you address the, like, well, no, I'm just buying it legally. Isn't there an overlap between the legal and the illegal?
You can address that better, yeah.
Yes.
Let me tell you.
The 5-minute version or less,
Okay.
please.
So just, I don't want to like villainize people that have actually gone through the process to get their legal licenses and their permits. They've done, you know, a lot of work and they've paid a lot of money to do that. But I have seen crossover. There's definitely some, I guess you could call it fraud on that side, but that's not for us to deal with. That's for the Department of Cannabis Control at the state level. They dispose of plants or say that they've disposed of plants if they haven't disposed of plants, but now those plants are getting sold on the black market, but they get to report like, oh, these plants didn't survive, and then they still sell them. Also, there's been like purchasing from black market to dispensaries, and I don't know, you know, if they were duped. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to villainize them. They do the work to do what they need to do or try to do what they need to do.
But illegal plants
Illegal
can and
plants.
have been sold in dispensaries.
At
yes.
least product, for sure.
Product, excuse me.
Legal product.
Or legal plants have been now made illegal because they've been reported as dead to the state, but then sold anyway, and they're not dead.
Right. So just for that aspect, you know, it's one of those where it's like, it's not an industry that hurts. I mean, it has consequences. It has, and it continues to. I do want to close on just 2 verses here, and I think it's really important. This is Jesus, and he was just talking about his followers and the attitude they should have towards the things of God, which, again, God is the owner of everything. Luke 16, verse 10 through 13, Jesus speaking, he says, "One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with true riches?" Like, if you can't be entrusted with financial stuff that God has provided for us and use it in a way that glorifies him, then how in the world would God entrust that person with anything of true riches? It goes on, it says in verse 12 and 13, "And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can have 2 masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." Money's a tool, but there are people right here in our county that worship it. The thing is, it's a very cruel little g God, money is, because it's never satisfied. You'll never have enough. You'll get it and you'll go, oh, I just need to get that, and then I just need the first million, and then I need the next. And you don't care about how many lives are destroyed or the consequences of it, or how right around you, the county we live in is suffering because you have another God that you're focusing on. And Jesus was very clear. You cannot serve God and money. Can't do it. Can't do it. So, church, I know, I'm sure things have been shaken a little bit here, and that's okay, but we need to have light shed on it for sure. Next week, we're going to have a person named Greta, and I don't know her personally, but when I mentioned it, Andrea gleefully yay! So tell me a little bit about the person who's going to talk about.
Because of the numbers, don't be discouraged. Come next week because she is an amazing presenter. And
What is she? She's going to be focusing
awesome.
on environmental. What is she? You've heard her speak.
I have a couple times, and she. So they run their agency. This is so amazing that this is in our area. It's in Blue Lake. It's called the Ecological something, IERC. I can't remember the acronym right now, sorry. But we do have a church member here that works for them. And so...
What do they do?
I think he does environmental testing or something, but they go out on public land grows and do assessments, environmental assessments, including water diversion, pollutants. They know tons and tons about different pesticides and the effects that they have on animals. And I'm hoping that she brings that presentation that I saw, because it was so impactful just to see, and I don't want to spoil any of it for you, but it is so interesting and also very heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But
And
please
it's
come.
all right here in our
It's
county.
all right here, and she's an expert that
Yeah.
she's used throughout the state, probably beyond, and is cited in so many different publications. She's a really knowledgeable person, and I guarantee you she will not disappoint.
So would encourage you to come next week as we look at the environmental side of how the cannabis industry has affected things right here in Humboldt County. But we need to be good stewards, every single one of us. And John, would you close us in prayer as we go out tonight?
Heavenly Father, just thank you for bringing us here tonight. Thank you for allowing us to be able to talk about this subject, Lord. And just thank you for shedding light on it for all of us and just giving us this information and everything from our children, using it in vaping pens and the environmental cost to it, finding the dead salmon in the streams and the animals abused on these marijuana grows that are illegal. Father, we just pray you change the heart and minds of each one of us, Lord, so that we look at the industry for what it's become, not what we might have known it as or what it was in the past, but what it's really become in this county and its effect on, from our kids to friends and coworkers and our bosses. One in every 60, somebody's related to this business, Father, and it's really causing a lot of hurt in this county, Father. So I pray you just change our hearts and minds. I ask you just bless each one of us, and thank you for bringing us here tonight, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Amen. 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 God bless you guys. Thank you for coming out tonight.